What I always recommend is business to be involved in all the implementations, in all the phases, not only in user acceptance tests or the feature template sessions. It's always, or feature standard. It's all the way. Any implementation should be business driven, and IT will support to that in order to get a successful implementation. Also, very important to focus on the training, all change management that in some deployments are fully forget. And it's really important to be sure that we are covering the business requirements, the users are properly trained, and the change management is assessed in order to get a successful deployment for any ERP solution.
Okay, great point. Thank you so much, Daniel, for that. So Kyler, over to you. Two things. Number one, any sort of trends that you are observing, as well as closing advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great points, Daniel. I definitely think IT and the business, that's a huge trend that we've seen over the last couple of years, is those kind of move into that, and the evolution of the CIO role, right, as really becoming more of a business leader than a technical leader. And I think, one of the trends that we've kind of covered today is how fast can you do this? How quick can you do this? And we've talked about it already, but the question really in that statement is you, the client. What are you trying to achieve, and what are you trying to, get as far as business? And a lot of times, what I think is a great innovation, but it's also a little bit scary for us that have seen implementations go really wrong, is seeing the birth of these microservices or more of these modular based open source ERP options, because they are flexible, they are more affordable, they're not just focused on kind of like this one big bang approach. They're able to be more phased in the budget, and they're easier to get kind of approval for. The thing you want to really look at this trend is, yes, this is a shift in the marketplace, and it makes it a bit more competitive, which I think is super healthy. The thing that we want to do first is make sure that you understand what you're getting into. You don't know what you don't know. A lot of people, I think probably, the top SAP consultant I know has done 30 implementations, and that's crazy, right? So you don't do this every single day. So reach out to someone who's in the technology agnostic world, who's able to kind of be your coach through this process, that's dedicated and contractually, for Marcus's point, to making sure that you are achieving the goals that you want to achieve. So then you're able to really sit down and say, okay, this is what I have, and this is what I want to achieve on that front. I think my advice for success is very much the same, is go into this with full eyes open as an executive leadership team. This is truly a transformation of your entire business. It is not an IT project. It takes the people, strategies around them. It takes strategies around the processes, right? You can't throw technology over broken processes. And then it takes the technology, which honestly is a very third afterthought for those to get ready to have a successful implementation. So making sure that you understand the just breadth of this project, even if you're going to take a more agile approach, mini waterfall approach, whatever you want to call it, right? You understand what you're getting into. And that's the piece that phase zero planning becomes so critical to understanding where you're going on your enterprise roadmap.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great points, Kyler. So Marcus, over to you. Any sort of trends from the ERP implementation perspective and closing advice?
Yeah, I mean, just generally, I think, you can't adopt technology for the sake of adopting technology. To Kyler's point, I mean, this is a business transformation, and it's about the people. From my perspective, you have to take what any vendor says with a grain of salt, and they're going to promise you, that it's going to be a fast and easy process that's going to, meet your business needs. It's going to be out of the box, off the shelf. We're using modular technology, artificial intelligence, agile, whatever it is. They're minimizing the complexity of this, and you have to understand that. The other thing that I think is becoming to the forefront really is understanding the value that your data has to these companies and protecting your data. Someone said it a little while ago. I mean, you don't want your your company data, your enterprise data within the bounds of one particular software solution and that vendor charging you to access your own data to talk to other AI systems. That's just not going to work. And that is a trend that we are starting to see. And then finally, what I always say in these types of situations is, you've got to review that contract. You've got to understand the risks that you're getting into, mitigate those risks, have someone experienced look at these contracts. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lawyer, a contracts person can do the job, but somebody has to look at this. These contracts are changing, the risk profile is changing, the technology is changing. You can't walk into this with the expectation that you're going to spend $30 million over a 7-year period and not look at the contract. It just doesn't make sense. That's a professional malpractice in my view.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great points, Marcus. Scott, over to you. Any sort of trends and closing advice, please?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend that I see is that ERP is becoming more modular, more granular in nature, and that this idea of a composable ERP, even a composable enterprise, is what's happening. As Kyler said, line of business leaders are really getting a seat at the IT table, and they're starting to talk that same language. And so what that brings about is, and maybe here's my controversial statement: your ERP implementation will never end.
Yep.
You will constantly be implementing something new, right? At the core of it, it's like the big trunk of a huge tree, right? Is your core ERP, your system of record, your main transaction system. And that stays pretty stable, right? Debits are debits and credits are credits, and invoices and orders and whatever. That stays pretty stable. What happens in change is out on the branches and leaves of the tree. And those are the kinds of things where the business is going to say, this has to change, this has to change, that has to change. And so you'll constantly be implementing new capabilities in your, what I'll call the broader ERP ecosystem. And our advice there is, listen to the business, stay agile, don't lock yourself in from a commercial perspective to future changes that might happen. And I'll just end with this from the SAP perspective. I mean, we're helping our clients continue to get value out of their current SAP systems well past the end of maintenance deadlines that SAP has mandated, because it's too soon. The thing's still working. It's highly customized. We don't need to change it. That core, that trunk of the tree doesn't need to change. We have to do things in and around it. So don't spend so much time, making a new tree. Rather, let's focus on things we can do in and around it. And that's our advice: is keep your options open and decide your what and your why before you commit to a who and a when, if that helps.
It does help. Thank you so much, Scott, for that. And I'll end with my own thoughts and comments and the way we started in the beginning. To be completely honest, when we look at the traditional implementation versus the next-gen implementation, if you really think about it, on-prem versus cloud, in cloud, I think the control is going to go back to the vendors, and that's where the real problem is. The implementations are going to be 10 times harder. The more composable, the more fragmented you are going to make your data silos, as well as the architecture, the implementation complexity is probably going to be 10 times more. So yes, you are going to have tools. Yes, you are going to have technology, but you are increasing the effort with these implementations when you are going to increase the complexity of those technologies. So my advice to you is going to be whatever Marcus said. Okay, listen to third-party vendors, what they are saying. Pay attention to the contract. Pay attention to data access, who holds the data, and what is going to be the overarching architecture. I guess once you are going to build your target operating model,